Recording. We are recording.
Okay. All right. So I'll just ask you some of the questions I have. This is about you and running and that sort of thing. You can just say whatever you want. Sound good?
Hold on 1 second, Chris.
Okay.
I'm recording something. What's up, Harry?
Where's Mom?
She went out with Jack for a minute. She'll be back in a few minutes, okay? Yeah, he can't see you, but Harry says hello, Chris.
Hi.
I don't have a camera, so he can't see you. I can only see him. Okay.
Right. Sorry.
You want to say something, Harry? Just talk towards me.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
All right.
Buddy, I gotta. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, Harry. All right. We are all set.
Sweet. All right. So in no particular order, and it doesn't mean that these are what the questions will actually say on the video, but here we go. All right. So Andrew, what got you into running?
Okay. Well, running, I actually really ran most of my life. Since I was about 15 or 16, I'd run 5K on a daily basis. Never really seriously, just go out and do it. When we were living on Cape Cod, I was even still running then. I didn't really talk much about it, but we're still doing it. And then I moved back to Nova Scotia, and a friend ran a half marathon. And I thought, well, I know I'm in better shape than him. So if he can do it, I'm sure I can do it. I think you said the same thing to me after I ran a marathon. So that's sort of where it's kicked off from there, and it just grew.
Okay. So what other extreme challenges have you done so far?
So I've run, I think, 5 official full marathons. I've done a number of endurance events, hiking up and down a ski hill in the winter for 8 to 10 hours, just seeing how many laps you can complete, trudging through the snow and the ice and that sort of thing. Of course, you and I in 2012?
I think it was 2012.
I think it was, yeah. We did the Goofy Challenge where I ran my first full marathon in Disney in 2010. And then we were still in our competitive mode with each other from rock climbing. And so you said, if you can run a half or a full, it can't be that hard. So I'm going to run a half in 2012. And then I said, fine, I'm going to run the half with you in 2012 and then run the full the next day just to belittle your accomplishment. And
yes,
then
that's
kicked
exactly
off
what you said, actually. Just to belittle my accomplishment was the exact words, yes.
And then it kicked off, and you turned out to be a really good runner. And then you were announced you were running the 5. And yep. I was talking about throwing an unofficial 10 in there after the 5K, and Allison put an end to it at that point. So I'm done. So we ran the Goofy Challenge in 2012, 5, half, and full over 3 days. Last year, I think I ran 4 full marathon distances. One was a training run one day, and it just kept going and going and going, and it turned into a full marathon by the time it was over. And that capped off the year. I capped off last year with a 100K day going up and down the side of a mountain on a trail. Unfortunately, it rained that day, so there was a lot of mud. So it was a long, wet, cold, muddy day, and I was 22 hours to cover the 100K that day.
Wow.
So that's been my most significant challenge to date.
Wow. Okay, so now you got a new challenge coming up. This is Everesting. This isn't necessarily running. This is just an extreme endurance challenge of ascending the hill. So talk a little bit about your training specifically for this Everesting.
Sure. So just to back up a little bit with the Everesting, how this even came onto my radar is one of my good friends who's an incredible endurance athlete, Adam Pierce, He did an Everesting on the same hill I'm doing it on, but he did it on his bike. So that was 2 or 3 years ago, and it's a big thing in the cycling world, not so much in the running world. So he did it on his bike, and then when you and I talked early last year, and I said I was going to, do some sort of fundraiser, I started digging. I didn't want to do Dawson or the road I did last year again, 100K on there, been there,
Right.
and I wanted to do something else. And the idea of an Everesting came up, and I didn't even know if it was a possibility. So I started researching it, because I was thinking it was going to be the 200 plus kilometer day, which is outside my abilities right now. But when I saw I could be driven back down, I said, okay, that's it. So unfortunately, and fortunately, I will be the 63rd person. Yeah, 63rd person to register in Everesting. Not to say other people haven't done it, but on this site, it's only been registered 63 times. I'll be the third Canadian. So there's no training plans. This is kind of make it up.
Right.
So
Right. That's thick. That's 60.
Randall,
That's across the world as far as we know. 63 total.
that's 63 total have registered. That's not to say other people haven't done it, but on this site, it's been registered 63 times.
And that's 63
enough,
people. That's 63. That's not the bike, right?
that's not the bike. It's been registered about 3,500 times on the bike. Running, it's been done 62 times. I'll hopefully be the 63rd. I know there's another guy out there that did one, because oddly enough, the guy I worked at a summer camp with, and he did it, and I did the math, and he had completed it, but I told him about it, but he just wasn't interested in that registering it. Even when I told him he could be third Canadian, he didn't want to do it. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so training was really weird. It ran a lot of stairs at work. Climbing the hill I'll be working on with a 40-pound weight vest strapped to me. Just whatever I could. I have put in a 12-hour day on the hill and did half the distance I need to do back in May. So that was a confidence builder. And unfortunately, I got injured and sick this year. So
Yeah, I was gonna say the training for this is got to be pretty extreme anyway. So, what kind of injuries, or what injuries have you had so far?
I've had an Achilles injury this year. It stopped me from running much more than 5K throughout the year. So I've been to 10K a few times since May, and ran 21K once this year. So I have not, whereas last year I was running 30 to 35K, like 20 miles every weekend. So I don't have that volume, but thankfully I've gotten some solid cardio training in on the bike and that sort of thing. So, I don't need necessarily the running fitness. So that's the plus side. So, and I know I can do 12 hours, and you just keep going.
So sounds like it's obviously physical, and anyone who's done any kind of running, especially long distance, knows there's a mental game. So if you have to name what you think the hardest part of all this training is, what would you say it'd be?
The hardest part of all this training?
Yep.
Boredom, I think. Sometimes like the boredom's pretty rough. Just like the 12-hour day towards the end, I was bored out of my mind. It's like, I don't want to walk this stupid hill again. That's pretty rough. For me, it's the other part is just my schedule. I have to get up at 4 a.m. To basically, I get up at 4, put a half an hour in on the bike, go get showered. I've got an hour and a half commute. get changed, run, shower at my desk, try to work out at lunch, and then it's hour and a half home, and it's 7 o'clock by the time I'm home and had supper, and it's in bed by 9.
Right.
So it's just hard to maintain that cycle.
Right. Wow. So now looking forward, October 18th, that's the day. What are you most concerned about on that day?
Weather. Weather's my number one concern. If I get a good day, I know I can do 12 hours. I know mentally I can just keep going. So I know I can grind it out. It might take me 30 hours, but I know I can do it.
Nice.
All my friends have instructions that if they see me drifting off, to slap me in the face because I can't sleep. That's
Right.
one of the key features of this. So as this goes on, that 2-minute drive down the hill each time, that gets harder and harder. Getting in and out of a vehicle gets extremely difficult. We're talking about maybe me just crawling on my hands and knees into the minivan. But the key thing is I got to stay awake for that 2 minutes.
Yep.
So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, especially during the night.
Well, and how many people do you plan on having there with you day of?
Day of, I will have one of my good friends, Andrew Postma. He's going to do 12 hours with me from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., driving me down, and then when he drives back up, he'll park the van, walk partway down to meet me, and walk up with me. So he'll be with me for part of the day as long as he can be with me. Coming down, he'll be with me, driving me down for 12 hours. Mm-hmm. Then Allison, my wife's going to come out for 3 or 4 hours. And then I've got another friend coming out with Allison to kind of walk with me. Hopefully, another couple, Adam and Tracy, are going to come out from like 8 or 9 to midnight. Right. And then my friends Misty and Tara are going to join me from like midnight to 5 a.m. So they're going to get me through the night, or most of the night, because they were the ones that got me through the 100K during the night. And then they are going to basically sleep in the back of my van, and my friend Andrew Postman is going to come back out with his van, and he's going to start driving me down again at 5 a.m. on the Saturday. And then Misty and Tara are going to join back in sometime after they've got some rest. So it's a pretty small group, people that I really trust, that I know me, know my limits, know, when I'm done, when I'm not done. Last year at one point in the 100K, I got really sick. I drank something with carbonation in it, and it made me like really, really late, like at about kilometer 90. And it made me really sick, and I was laying on the ground, throwing up, saying, I don't think I can do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And they looked at me and said, get up, get moving. We're not coming back out here again. So, they knew I wasn't done. They knew I was just at a low point, and they got me up and moving. Whereas they'll also know if I'm hurt or, in real distress. They're able to tell that. So they're people I trust to tell me when I'm done and when I'm not done.
Nice. All right. So you are doing all this as a fundraiser for Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida. Why cancer, or why Moffitt Cancer Center?
Well, Adriana, my friend, your wife, was diagnosed with 4-stage lung cancer. I don't know the official diagnosis of the tumor type. I don't know if you want to share that or not.
Yeah, actually, yeah, because it's it's really sort of interesting, and it's one of those types of cancers that they're seeing more and more in younger women who were not smoking in their 30s and 40s, and it's adenocarcinoma with an EGFR mutation, exon 20. Adenocarcinoma is a type of cancer. It's kind of generic. You'll see that in a lot of things. But then the EGFR mutation is found in about 3% of people that have adenocarcinoma in the lungs. And then those with the exon 20 is even less. And so that's the particular type of lung cancer that she has. And what they said is one day it's not there and the next day it's there. And that's just how it is with that particular type. So it's definitely something that if caught early is very treatable, but it's almost never caught early because you'd have to have an MRI or a CT scan or something, and people just don't have those for no reason. So the only reason it was caught for Adriana is she spent about a year of coughing, and like any doctor, they just told her it was allergies for about a year. And after a year, we pushed and said, we really don't think it's allergies. We think it's something else. We need a scan. And they listened to her lungs and they heard a crackling sound. They said it sounded like Velcro. And at that point, they pretty much knew, and they ordered the scan. And within a few weeks, it was July 6th of 2017 is when we're sitting in the office and they say, yep, it's cancer. So.
Wow.
Yep.
I clearly remember getting the invitation to join the Supergirl group you started.
Yeah.
And sitting at work getting that and just like being floored, like having to pull myself, into my cubicle and just kind of withdraw from everybody for a while because it was like, I couldn't process it. And especially when I saw, 4th stage, it was just this, gut punch of this is horrible.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember the day, and what's funny is, and this doesn't sound like it should be the worst thing, but the hardest part of the next few weeks was telling people. We hated telling people. We would generally, break down anytime we had to tell anyone. And the more we told people, maybe the more real it got. So anytime that we would have to tell someone at work, family member, friends, whatever, we hated that part. We just wanted everyone to know. Like the second that the doctor said it, we're like, you know what? If everyone could just know, then that would be great. We don't want to tell someone and then tell someone else and tell someone else. And that was oddly a really hard part of those first few weeks, is telling people.
Yeah. So, so that's basically, obviously what started this off. And then from there, we had a conversation back in January, I guess it was, because, our goofy running always comes up in January in the Facebook memories.
Yeah,
I gave you a call just to chat about that. And that's when we got talking about your pumpkin house. And from there, the talk of wanting to do a fundraiser for Adriana came up. And as we said, I did some research, found the Everesting, and here we are, about a month out from the event.
Well, and I should probably explain why Moffat specifically, because we didn't start at Moffat. We started at a different hospital, which was a great hospital, and that's where very early on, what they believed was going to happen is she was going to go through about 8 rounds. Actually, originally it was 4 rounds of chemotherapy and then surgery to take out the cancer, which was about the size of an orange, is what they said. But that was the plan. 4 rounds of chemotherapy and surgery, and we said we'll be done with this, and this will just be a footnote. And that was the first couple of months, January till October. And then when October came around, they did another scan and said, okay, we're going to have to add some more chemo until January. And so they did that, and they actually saw a little bit of progress. One of the few times we've actually seen progress with the tumor actually going down. And then January, I believe it was either 15th or 16th. These days tend to stand out, is when we were with her oncologist, and it's when they got the results of the mutation, the EGFR mutation, and that's when they knew that traditional chemotherapies, carboplatin, Alimta, the traditional types of chemotherapy, they said that those will not work. And that was a tough day, because they basically said there isn't anything else that we can do. I mean, we could keep trying, but we know that this won't be effective on her particular type of lung cancer. So there's no other treatment that we have that is going to be beneficial, which was very hard to hear, because the last thing we ever want to hear is there's nothing we can do. We think there might be a day someday where we hear that news, and we honestly didn't think it was going to be 6 months into a fight where we thought a couple of rounds of chemo and surgery and we're done with this. And now we've moved from that to there's nothing we can do. Except, fortunately, they didn't say there's nothing we can do. They said there's no FDA approved treatments that will help. However, Moffitt is working on a study for this specific type of mutation, and you need to go there. And ever since then, that was January of 2018, ever since then, we've been at Moffitt. And the first treatment they tried, it didn't work. By October of that year, they said that treatment didn't really work very well, and put her on a new treatment. And she's been on that same treatment. I actually have the treatment that she's on here. So you can believe it. We went from infusions stuck into her arms, and then a port that's inserted into her chest, to this daily pill. And this has kept the cancer at more or less the same size since last December. And now she goes back every 4 weeks and just takes a daily pill. So it's kind of amazing what they're working on with cancer research, and that's why we're at Moffitt.
And of course, that's who we're doing this fundraiser for.
That's right, because what it is that people ask us all the time, what do you need? What can we do to help? And we love that. That's great. What we need is the cure for cancer. And if anyone has that, please bring it forward. In the meantime, Moffitt is obviously our best chance for that cure. Hopefully within our lifetimes, and if not, then for future generations. But either way, they're the best chance for the cure. The cure is what we need more than anything else. And so helping Moffitt fulfill their mission is really the best thing that anyone can do for Adriana and myself right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I would do this 10 times over for Adriana, just so you know.
Well, we appreciate that. And of course, looking forward to the day. We'll be watching you closely. But, I posted recently sort of our backstory, as you mentioned a little bit, going all the way back to Cape Cod. And I came across photos to Salem, Massachusetts. And gosh, every Saturday, as you said, we'd go rock climbing, generally indoor rock climbing. One time outdoor, that was a little risky. Yeah. I remember being on a boulder getting stuck. I'm only 20 feet off the ground, but still, probably wasn't even 20 feet.
Having to pull you to safety.
Yeah.
Well, Derek held my ankles.
Right. But then comes, growing up and adulting, and you all left. You and Allison left, and had good job opportunities, and we moved out west for a while. And then came to Florida, 11 years ago now, almost 12 years ago now. So here we are with a long history, but a lot of it has been apart, actually.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which to me tells you how important friends are, especially at certain phases in your life. For me, going to Cape Cod, didn't really know anyone, how important you and Allison were for sort of taking me in at the time. And you can see how certain friendships, certain relationships at certain times, they can just carry you through, and time, distance, doesn't even matter. So
For sure. And I mean, switching to Adriana for a second,
yeah,
I still remember the Saturday at 7, the event we had,
yep,
where she came in for your first date.
yep,
Yeah, I remember that. And just getting to know her and just thinking this girl's incredible.
yeah,
Gifted artist, really kind, funny person. And just becoming friends with her, being so happy for you, being so happy for both of you, being lucky enough to get a key to your apartment so we could sneak in, so we could set up candles and all of that, knowing the proposal was coming, being in your wedding. All those things were so awesome. And then to go to Disney, and my boys get to meet her, and they instantly fall in love with her. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And just what an amazing person she is. So maybe you can talk a little bit about Adriana and just how you met and all that sort of stuff, and how
Yeah, well,
awesome she really is.
yeah, I remember the day. I remember the day we first met in person. Of course, in 2003, online dating was not all that usual, but I'd gotten to a point where I definitely wanted to explore that, and that's how we met. It was a website called ChristianCafe.com because our relationship with God is important, and so instead of using other ones, I used a Christian Cafe, and good thing because she was on that one. And you get a free trial for anyone who hasn't done these. Of course, it's been a long time since I've looked at it. But we got a free trial. We both got a free trial. And she sent me a message very early on, and I didn't respond to it in a timely manner. And she actually had to extend her free trial and pay for a month in order to wait for my response, in order to sort of poke me back. And so she still mentions that from time to time, that she had to pay, just to get my attention, which is ridiculous because, clearly I'm an idiot. I should have paid closer attention. And within a few weeks, we met. And I remember very well that day because she came with a friend of hers, which she was wearing a long sweater, sort of down to a calf length, sort of sweater jacket. And I remember
That's
turning
weird.
to. What's
Sorry, I was
that?
gonna say it's weird. I don't know why. I remember that sweater. It was gray.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
why she came in. I just remember thinking how tall and kind of striking she was as she came through the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she definitely made an impression immediately.
Yes. I mean, so first of all, just beautiful. I mean, Brazilian, right? So, I mean, amazing features that come with Brazilians in general, but specifically with her. Um, yeah, I remember being very happy that I had finally reached back out and was able to meet her. And so shortly after that, she asked me out, which I thought was a good sign, and we went. It was my first time in a Starbucks, actually, and I ordered wrong. Apparently, I didn't know how to pronounce things at Starbucks, and I don't really drink coffee anyway, which is strange for a Brazilian to marry someone who doesn't drink coffee. But I drink tea, and for a couple of hours, we just drank tea and coffee and walked around a place called Mashpee Commons, and just talked for the longest time. And it was very early on that I knew I wanted to spend as much time as I could with her. Within a few months, of course, I mean, we were dating at that point, for certain. We were married within about a year and a half. But within a few months, some of my favorite things is I was traveling a lot for work back then. And I went to Australia for work. And while I was gone, she decided to, because I did give her a key into my apartment so she could go in there if she wanted to, escape her family or whatever. And she rearranged all of my furniture. And I remember coming back and all of my furniture was rearranged. And I remember thinking, I don't care. I don't care that she rearranged all my furniture. That's totally fine with me. She's here. She's in my life. She's having fun. And taking active participation, and didn't bother me one little bit that she rearranged everything in my house. And that was just kind of like a instantly comfortable with each other. Like, there's no drama, there's no challenge, we've almost never fought ever, because there's just no reason to. So it was from the very beginning just very easy to be around. I think everyone's found that she's just great to be around. And so with your and Allison's help, and other friends as well, we proposed, and she paused longer than I would have liked, but eventually said yes. And 2005, 5505, May 5th of 05, we were married, and within a few months set off on some great adventures that eventually led us here to Florida and Disney almost 12 years ago. So in general, not only just great to be around, beautiful, amazing artist, as you mentioned. She can draw up just anything, amazing caricatures, decorations of ornaments, anything that you want. So extremely talented, extremely loving. She will never be the person who takes the last piece of anything. Like if there's a last cookie, she'll always leave it for someone. It's just those little things that really make her extremely special. And yeah.
One of my favorite Adriana memories from early on, we were going to see Ravi Zacharias. I don't know if you remember that. It was an early day.
I know what you're about to say.
And for everybody listening, Chris is a bit of a drama queen, always on, extremely entertaining, always entertains everybody around us.
Wow.
So this night, it was an early date. He was really on, trying to impress Adriana. And
sure.
We're driving, and Adriana is giving directions. And Adriana coming with being from Brazil, has an amazing Brazilian accent as well.
Yes.
And we're driving, and she tells us to turn left at the satellite. And turn right at the next satellite. And you looked at her and said, "What, do they give directions by satellite dishes in Brazil?" And I remember the look on her face when she looked at you and went, "Set of lights."
Yeah, you actually don't want to make her mad, but yeah, that was one of those where I'm thinking, do I need to look for like a giant satellite dish? Am I turning at a satellite dish here? How is this going to work? Nope. Set of lights. Yeah. But even now, one of my favorite things is to listen to her voice. But I think she recently changed it. But I used to listen to her voicemail if I would leave her a message or whatever, because she'll say in English and in Portuguese. But in the English, it says more. Paraphrasing a little bit, but the important part is leave a message and I will get back at you.
One of the other awesome memories from early on our time at Cape Cod, we went skating at Boston Commons.
Yes.
I think it was.
Yes.
And I don't think she'd ever skated before.
No.
Never been on ice.
No.
And I just remember like a hood drawn so tight and just seeing like two big brown eyes. But, I was like, "Come on, I'll help you." And she was just totally game, got out on the ice, wasn't embarrassed, wasn't uncomfortable, just had a great time doing it.
Yeah, it's actually taken her some time to admit some of the things that we asked her to do that she really wasn't a fan of at the time, including the Renaissance Festival or the Renaissance Fair. If you remember the Renaissance Fair, it turns out she was really not game for that at all. Didn't like being on that for a while.
I don't know if you were with us last time we were at Disney or not, but we were going on Expedition Everest. And one of our kids didn't want to go on, and she was talking to someone about, I forget what it's called, where a parent can go on and a kid and some sort of ride, swap, share thing.
Right.
Anyway, she just walked up to this person and started talking in Portuguese to them.
Right.
And they went back and forth, and Adriana was like, okay, yeah, it's all figured out. Here's what you got to do. And I looked at her and I said, what's the secret gang sign? She's like, what? I said, we just walked up to a person and started speaking Portuguese. How did you know? And then she kind of looked at me for a minute and she's like, everybody's where they're from is on their name tag. But there was just this moment of her staring at me like, what is wrong with you?
I'll tell you, well, even now when we're on vacation, you know, she's just in tune to hearing Portuguese, and I'm pretty good at hearing it as well. But we'll be in the middle of a conversation, and she'll just say, yep, there it goes. And I know that means that somewhere around here is a Brazilian, because there are Brazilians everywhere. She says, or there's my people, or something along those lines, some kind of sign to me that tells me that somewhere around here are Brazilians. Which is great, because, you know, some of the places we travel to, and we're traveling a lot, you know, we have a plan that if we really need to, we get into trouble somewhere, and it may not be the best to come across as an American at a particular time, that our plan is that I shut up and she speaks Portuguese and I just start nodding. So that's our like danger plan if that ever happens.
One of the other awesome things, being friends with you, and of course then becoming friends with Adriana, was I got exposed to Brazilian culture.
Yeah.
And got to find out how sharing and how family oriented they were, meeting her dad and her mom, going to her house for barbecues and meeting her brothers and cousins, and her dad out in the back cooking on an oil drum and drinking a beer and then pouring beer over it. It was awesome.
Yep, man, all they need is
so that was an awesome piece too of just our ongoing friendship and adventure, getting that exposure to other cultures.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to go to Brazil as well. So
you mentioned traveling. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about some of the trips you've been on, and you know, you decided to kind of seize the day?
Absolutely. You know, it shouldn't take a cancer diagnosis for people to realize what's important. And I won't say that it did, but regardless of a diagnosis or not, it is so important to live your life, because no one listening to this, just click on a video here. No one listening to this knows how much time we have. None of us. Not me, not you, not anyone. So the question is, what do you want to do, and what's your priorities? And for us, it's travel. And that's why the chemotherapy was so difficult initially, because she had to go back every three. It may have been every other week, actually, the original chemotherapy. So going on vacation, and her immune system was compromised, and so eating certain things were an issue. But when we went to Moffitt and they switched to immunotherapy, then it was every couple of weeks, every like 3 or 4 weeks. And so we said, well, then let's get out there. Are we clear to travel? Her immune system is no longer compromised because it's immunotherapy. And they said yes. And we said, great. What are the places that we want to see that you can easily sit around and say, someday we'll get there? And we're like, why? Why wait? What's the reason? And so the first place was, so we put a list together. We got all the places, and we got like a 5-year plan of all the places we want to go to. So it was Ireland first. So we did that last year, and then Switzerland, followed by going to Bavaria, Germany, Prague, Austria, all in one trip. We just got back from Scandinavia area, including St. Petersburg, Russia, on a Disney cruise there. In a few weeks, we're going to go to her dream trip of going to Japan and China. And then next year, we got plans for Turkey and Spain and Romania and Poland. And we want to be, not only for ourselves, but we want to be examples for everyone of get out there, live your life, do what makes you happy, enjoy every single day, don't put things off, because you literally just don't know. So we're really grateful that our current treatments allow her to be able to travel. But I will say that's one of the challenges, the dark clouds that can live over our head is every time we come up to a trip, we don't know we're going to be able to go until we're actually on the plane, because she has gotten sick, high fevers right before these trips. We've been for our Switzerland trip. She was in the emergency room the day before we left, and they tried to admit her, and we said, no, we're not going to let you admit her into the emergency room. We disagree with you thinking it's pneumonia, and we went home not knowing if we were going to cancel our trip and go back to the emergency room, or if we were going to be on a plane the next day. And so we just never know if we're going to be able to go on these trips, and that's the difficult side. Probably one of the more difficult things that we deal with is the future is just so uncertain. So we don't worry about the future. We worry about today. We worry about this week. We think about the next scan only when it comes up, while we plan for the future. So Japan and China in just a few weeks, it's going to be great, and all the trips that are still coming in our future. So get out there.
Awesome.
Seize the day. Enjoy it.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
one other thing I think we need to talk about is this is sort of a tandem fundraiser. I'm up here doing my thing, doing the Everesting. Down in Florida, you're a big Haunted Mansion fan. So let's hear about what you're doing.
So
it's pretty awesome.
Also for Moffat, as a fundraiser for Moffat here locally, I have the Davenport Pumpkin House. Years ago, I went to Sleepy Hollow, New York, and came across the blaze. It's like thousands of pumpkins that are carved, and you walk around this old plantation, and I said, that's cool. I've always loved Halloween, but seeing pumpkins, I thought, gosh, there's skill involved, there's a craft involved. So I came home and I carved some real pumpkins, and quickly learned that real pumpkins in Florida heat do not work well. They shrivel within just a few hours, really. So the local craft stores have those fake pumpkins, which last, probably non-biodegradable and not best for the environment. But hey, for my purposes, they're perfect. And so I started with just a handful of those pumpkins and started carving them, thinking I could add every year. That first year I had 64 pumpkins, which if you do the math and think about the amount of carving, that's quite a bit. And I thought, wow, I'm nuts, 64 pumpkins. This year I'm going to be displaying just a little over 500 pumpkins, of which I've carved every single one of them. So now I guess if I was crazy before, I'm certifiable now. But it's turned into the Davenport, because of course I live in Davenport, Florida, but the Davenport Pumpkin House was on the news last year. And I thought, if I'm going to be a spectacle, let's be a spectacle for a cause, raising money for Moffat as well. So this year, same thing, Davenport Pumpkin House is back, bigger, better than ever. 316 pumpkins last year, 500 plus this year. And for everyone who wants to come out, see it, drive by, etc., or just remotely want to give a few bucks that will also go directly to Moffat, then again, we need the cure. And so any way that we can get the cure, the better. But more than that, the more people who contribute even $1, it doesn't matter, shows support for all of these. For you, when you're running, you'll think about the people supporting you. For us, in our really challenging days when we're sitting at the hospital all day long, we think about the people who are supporting and thinking about us. And the more support we can all get, the better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things I think I've been thinking a lot about is these challenges I take on for myself. I don't fully understand why. I'm wired that way. It's how I'm wired. It's how God made me. Covering long distances, for whatever reason, it's what I do. It makes sense. And I don't want to say it's easy for me, but I think it's easier for me than it is for most people. And so I'm very familiar with suffering. I'm very familiar with pain in these events. But I've been thinking about just the fact that I can walk off that hill at any point in time. 70K into it. I'm sick and I'm done. No one's really going to fault me if I walk off that hill because most people think 70K is a crazy distance.
Right.
That being said, Adriana, people like Adriana every day are fighting a battle. They're exhausted. They're tired. They're sick of the battle. They just want it done. They don't want to fight it anymore, but they don't have a choice. They've got to keep fighting that battle. And that's sort of been in the back of my head as I'm getting ready for this, just the difference between my struggle and, you know, people fighting cancer or any illness for that fact, you know, just how different it is.
Yeah, there. You know, when we're thinking about it, there are similarities. You know, I haven't run to the same extent that you have, but I did that 50K, 32 miles for anyone keeping track. I did that once, and so there are some really interesting similarities when you think about it of these extreme experiences and extreme experiences. I mean, that's what it is, right? It's extreme experience for you. She's going through an extreme experience, and and you're right. It's not her choice, and it's not fair. And there's nothing that she did to deserve it, and there's nothing she can do about it but endure it. And you know, today she's pretty tired. Today has been tired recently, and we never know if that's treatment or the cancer itself, or oxygen levels, or liver disease, all these other things that can potentially come with that. So some days she's hungry, some days she isn't, and it really is, and I think similar to these extreme experiences, a mental game. You know, there's a physical game, but it's a huge mental game.
It is so much mental. And when you're talking endurance events, there's obviously you have to do the training for it, but it is being able to, as you get longer and longer and longer, as it starts to hurt more and more, and your emotions dip, especially in the middle of the night when you've been spending 5 or 6 hours staring at like a 2 foot by 3 foot patch of light that's just ahead of you. Just going, you know, you get really dark, you get really depressed, you start thinking negative thoughts, and you have to fight through that. You have to go, this is going to get better. This is a momentary setback. I just got to keep pushing, and eventually I will feel better. But again, I have that choice, you know.
And that's hard for us, and that's hard for people with Adriana's particular diagnosis, because there's no belief that she's ever going to be cured. Nobody believes that. It's the understanding that this will be a lifelong struggle, and how long that lifelong struggle is what we're working on. Try to prolong that as much as possible. So there isn't a cure for this particular type. She's never going to be done with it ever. And here we are 2 years later, and the longer it goes on, it's those same dark places. So as you're running, you get to those dark places. 2 years later, we can and we do say, wow, 2 years later, still here. You know, general life expectancy is about 5 years, although we're sure we're going to go beyond that with these treatments. But we can sit on the couch nights and say, so is this it? Is it just going to get progressively worse? You know, every cough is okay. Is this a new normal? Is this a new level? And as 2 years and 3 years and 4 years, and God willing, 10, 20, 30 years go by, the mental game of sort of feeling isolated, feeling alone, wondering why, all those things definitely happen. In fact, the question of why didn't even really come up until really the last couple of months. The first few months, it's all about we're gonna fight it, we're gonna beat it, and then it's okay, we're going to keep fighting it, and maybe we'll, a miracle will happen, and then it's okay, the miracles, we'll pray for it, but let's not plan for that. And then you start to think, why and why us, and that sort of thing, and you just got to get those thoughts out of your head, just like when you're running. But they do creep in, and that is hard.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but we've had a couple conversations, and I found it interesting from the fact that you've been very frank about stuff. And I've never been in the position you've been in. How did you get to that point? Like, in terms of just being able to openly talk, about mortality and about the reality of the situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you just have to start talking about it. Going back to, we hated telling people that it was even happening because it made it real. But the sooner we made it real and embraced the reality, the better it was. And we've sort of carried that on ever since. And very early on, we've had the conversations of the what ifs. And we've talked with other people very much of, like you said, be very open and honest with our own conversations. We don't just sit around and say, oh, it's not going to come to that. Don't worry, a miracle's going to happen. We're like, no, if it happens, if a miracle happens, we'll take it. In the meantime, let's really plan ahead and talk about what life would be like, could be like in a few years from now. What renovations do we need to make to the bathroom in order for her to be able to use it should she get to a more of a frail state? And let's make sure that we can afford that, or even do it now if it makes sense. Let's order our trips and how physically demanding they're going to be, because we believe we'll get to a point where she can't hike up a hill anymore. And so let's hike up those hills now and save maybe some cruises or whatever for later, where it's not going to be necessarily as physically demanding. And it's just so freeing to embrace the reality and to be honest with each other. The challenge is it's almost a form of grieving in a way. You're grieving the future that you may or may not have. You're grieving the potential of losing my wife early. It is entirely possible, and likely, based on all statistics. And so ignoring that instead of embracing it prepares me for the eventuality, prepares her for the eventuality. I think probably one of the best conversations we have is, what do I do after? And we both felt it's important that I have a plan for what to do after, so that if that time ever comes where she is taken from me, that what that means is it's a beginning of a plan that she and I planned on together.
That's going to be a hard conversation.
It is, yeah. It's even hard to talk about right now, but it's
oh yeah, for sure.
It makes it not the end, and not what do I do now, and not wallow in self-pity, which all things are probably going to happen anyway. There's probably, how I respond to the time is however I'm going to respond to it. I can't plan for that, but to say that she and I planned on what I was going to do after, everything from what we do with the life insurance, what we do with her, what do I do for my own development, things like that. And so I know that if that were to happen, that I'm more not selfishly focusing on myself, but more fulfilling the life that she wants for me as well. And the more you have those conversations, the more prepared you feel in case it does happen. And if it doesn't, then great, that's fantastic. But those are the conversations that we have that we hope other couples don't have to, but it definitely is freeing to talk openly and honestly with each other, and I definitely recommend it. So.
It's really cool, just that concept of planning a future for you together.
Right.
That's something I wouldn't have thought of. But yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, in other news, once I get this one knocked off, I've got next year's challenge all picked out. So I'm planning to make this an annual event. So once I get through this one, maybe I'll announce it at the end. We'll see if I can talk at the end where I'm at. But because I've got a few. Hopefully, I've got a few surprises for this one too, up my sleeve. That I'm just kind of keeping to myself right now. A few people know some stuff, but we got to see how everything goes on the day.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that covers a lot of ground. I don't know if you've got anything else.
Nope. Those were all my things. I think with what we have here, we can put it together. I'll put some things together, run them by you, keep them short, simple, grab little things, and make a little series.
Yeah, it sounds good. And obviously, I mean, we covered a lot of ground, so I'm comfortable with everything on my end. But anything you don't want openly discussed, obviously, edit as needed.
Yep. Nope. Yeah. No, I got nothing to hide here. So.
Just don't do the Homer Simpson job on me. Her sweet can.
I'll make a mini series after you. Mm-hmm.
There's an awesome book called Off to Be the Wizard.
Okay.
And this guy just figures out the world as a computer simulation.
Okay.
And so he finds the file that controls everything, and then he can start controlling everything. But he ends up getting in trouble because he added a bunch of money to his bank account. But, even though it's not real money, it's still fraud and embezzlement in the world he's in.
Okay.
And so he decides his best thing to do is to go back in time, because he can control date and time of where he's at, and become a wizard in medieval times, because all of his use of technology and knowledge, he can obviously fool everybody.
Oh, that's a good idea.
He gets back there, and he finds all these people that are wizards from the future that have come back because they've got in trouble with the file. But there's like a guy from the 70s that had like a big mainframe, and he found this file anyway. He's talking to the guy, and he's like, I don't want to know about the future. He's like, I don't want to know. And he's like, near as I can figure, sometime around the early 90s, something called The Simpsons took over everything, because nobody can go more than 3 minutes without quoting them.
Yes. Totally accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty good book.
That's awesome.
Oh, well, I'm glad we got this done. That gives us some good material, and I'm just so happy this is coming together. And I just hope I can pull it off on this day.
Well, and the success, regardless of what happens on the 18th or whatever, you've already proven the point of strangers coming together. I mean, that was the point. And I know we'll hit the 2000. I'm sure that's not even a question based off of 1 week so far. And even if we didn't, it doesn't matter. But just seeing names that we have no idea who they are, and they're supporting you, supporting us, and by supporting you, whether or not they mean to, and I assume that they do, because that's how we're taking it, is they're supporting us, and they're saying, Andrew, we are behind you in what you're doing, and we are with Christopher and Adriana, and we think that cancer sucks because it does. And everyone says, what can we do for others? In this case, for you in Canada, for us in Florida, this is what we can do. And seeing people, seeing names that I have no idea, but they're taking a step forward. You're already doing it. So thank you.
Oh yeah, no, it's, I'm more than that. Like I said, I'd do this 10 times in a row if you asked me to. So I just so happy I can help out, and I think it's going to be, an amazing event, and yeah, we'll go from
Cool.
there.
All right,
All
so I'll
right.
start working on. So